Why do you postpone yourself? What are you waiting for? We're never where we want to be. It's in our heads, we're always somewhere where we don't want to be, and we need to get to the place where we do want to be. And it's always one plan after another. I need to do this and this and this and this. And until I achieve that, my life's on hold. Until I achieve that, I can't be happy.
You know when you stumble across a YouTube channel and you're wondering, how have I never seen this? It's like a rare find. Well, a few months ago, I found this channel called Accepting the Universe. And it's this guy, he's like he looks like a Hollywood actor, and he's sat in front of a bookshelf, just giving really good life advice. Anyway, I found this channel and it's the best life advice. And I found his most popular video that's got over 1 million views. It's called Why Do You Postpone Yourself? And I've watched it countless times. It's amazing. But anyway, a few days after finding this channel, my brother Luke comes up to me and he says, "Will, you have to get an interview with this guy. He gives the best life advice and he sits in front of a bookshelf." I'm like, I know that guy. So I contact him and he's happy to do a podcast with me. And we're going to be talking about the topic of why do you postpone yourself? Because I think it's a very important topic and it's something I've been thinking about since watching that video. And it also comes from the Stoic, Seneca. Why do you postpone yourself? Anyway, I'm sure I'll learn a lot. I'm sure you will learn a lot. So I'm excited for this talk. And I'll see you during the talk. And this talk, of course, is powered by Huel. So I'll be talking about that at the end of the talk. If you're interested in Huel products, stick around. And as always, guys, thank you for watching. I'll be doing more of these talks. I might even consider doing these talks live streaming them through YouTube or Twitch or something. So let me know if you think that's a good idea. It'll be more natural, more pressure, and you can also join in the chat. So we'll consider that. Okay.
This video, the reason I want to speak about it is because I've watched it a few times, and the first time I watched it, like I said, I clicked it and I was like, why am I postponing myself? And I just thought in my head, I was like, why am I holding back my potential? And then I watched it and kind of got different answers, and I was like, it raised more questions within me, and I seen the video from a different perspective. Kind of like, you know, the Stoic literature, you read it once and it means something to you, then you read it again, it means something else. And this question of postponing yourself, kind of, the more you think about it, the more meaning it takes on. So just briefly to explain, why did this idea come to mind? Like, why was it important for you to put this idea out there?
Again, I seek a direct connection on one hand with the ideas, and on the other hand with the people that I think could benefit from it, which is everyone. And it just comes from the simple effect that the Seneca's original text had on me. I'm just, if anything, I'm only passing that on. When I read, I don't remember which letter it was now, it's sort of early on, it's one of the earlier letters on ethics by Seneca, where he says, why do you postpone yourself? And he talks to his friend. These are letters to his friend, right? They're very informal, just like what we're doing on YouTube in that way. Very informal, very direct, nothing extraneous about it. Immediately asking, why do you postpone yourself? What are you waiting for? And sort of pointing out the relationship that we have with our own lives of doing everything backwards without realizing it. Now, Socrates famously said, no one does wrong knowingly or willingly, because we're all, being humans, we share the rational mind, at least the potential to it. So whenever we make decisions, we only make them because we think they're logical, because we think they're for our own good, and we devise these plans from how to get from where we are to where we want to be. And if it wouldn't make sense to us, we wouldn't be doing it. But that doesn't mean that we're perfect, that we come up with perfect plans. Sometimes our plans are faulty, but we don't realize it. That's why we keep doing it. So whenever someone manages to point that out to us, that we're in some sort of conflict, that we're doing something irrational, immediately we stop. And that's what Seneca was doing to his friend with that very powerful question. Why do you postpone yourself? And then all of a sudden we realize we're never where we want to be. It's in our heads, we're always somewhere where we don't want to be, and we need to get to the place where we do want to be. And it's always one plan after another. I need to do this and this and this and this. And until I achieve that, my life's on hold. Until I achieve that, I can't be happy. You know, first I must work, and then I may become happy. When you look at it, all our plans are based on that fundamental premise, which makes no sense whatsoever. Once you think about it, once it's revealed to you, you can't help but see it. And when you can't help but see it, you won't act according to that principle anymore, which is a good thing. So you say, hey, I want to be someone who reads a lot, because reading is exploration. And I want to come in contact with all these grand, beautiful ideas that some people spent a lifetime coming up with, and they've passed it on to me. Of course I want to read. Oh, but you know, I need to make a living. So for me to be able to be someone who reads a lot, I first need to make a lot of money so that I can then have the time to then read. But to say, well, if I didn't need money, I wouldn't need to work and I could read. I have this time now, you know, where can I cut? Where can I take time away? There's no way that my day is spent 100% efficiently. There has to be something that I'm doing now that I could take from to read more now, and not to give even more time away for some future postponement. And that's exactly what it is. And we don't have to be perfect. Progress is everything. Every step of the way is its own reward. I can guarantee you we all have at least half an hour in the day where we do something that we could stop, that is not making us a living, that is not any kind of responsibility that we have to our family or friends or work or anything like that, that we could right now free up to read or to do whatever, to spend more time with friends, to spend more time with family, whatever it is that our dream life is that we're postponing ourselves for, we can do more of that right now. And I would even argue that that's just the minimum. I think most people, just speaking from my own experience, I think I've had hours that I wasn't using, right? And so we don't need to do all this delaying. We really don't. That doesn't mean we can't have goals. In fact, for a rational human being, especially philosophy tells us this, it is very proper to have goals and to have big goals and to work a lot and to do everything, to sacrifice whatever we want. But it all needs to come from a place of necessity and importance and happiness. It's like, I'm happy where I am now, but I also have goals. So the entire process of me achieving or not achieving the goal, it doesn't matter. I will both be happy where I am now, as well as improving my situation. And what's better than that? And it all starts with stopping to postpone yourself. It really does.
Yeah, it's crazy today. People even, you hear people say like, I want to watch this film that's on Netflix, and they say, I don't have 2 hours to watch that film. But then they'll just put on some series that takes half an hour, but they'll end up watching 8 episodes, and they could have watched that film. And it's only a small thing like watching a film, but I think we're missing so much value in life by just delaying with these distractions that aren't really fulfilling us. You were saying in your video about we have the important things we want to do in our life, and we end up doing them last. So we wake up and we do the least important things, like we'll check TikTok or Instagram or something first thing in the morning. How would you, because I've been guilty of this, and I know this is probably what most people struggle with. They wake up to go straight to TikTok, and they have all these dreams. They go to bed with all these dreams, like I'm going to get up, work out, I'm going to start writing, I'm going to study, I'm going to practice cooking, whatever it may be. And then you wake up, all those dreams just gone because you just want to scroll. Do you have a framework or a plan to kind of ensure that you don't fall for that trap?
To me, I mean, this is a very practical thing that we're now talking about, which I think to a large degree needs to be very individual. I think the problem is often when we prescribe people, that's why I never want to give personal advice, because people do ask a lot naturally. But I always say, here are the fundamental underlying ideas that will motivate you, that will show you how the world really is. I always talk about there's a universal standard. We have our own standards, but we're only single individuals in this grand thing, and there's a universal standard. And that's what the Stoics mean by living according to nature, capital N, nature. It's not actual nature, trees and flowers, but it's the universe. The universe does things a certain way, and that's just how it's going to be, no matter what you think about it. So if you adapt yourself to that, if you live in tune with that, then you will live a happy life. But if you have your own conception, which does not match with the universal standard, you're going to be constantly battling, constantly fighting, not only an invisible enemy, because it's sort of everything around you, but also an enemy that you could never, ever defeat. I mean, it's the universe. Look what you're going up against here. So I think what it is just to realize, how does my day really work? How do I as a human really work? How does my mind function? What motivates me? And what do I wish to be? Who do I wish to be? And how much of that is just because I see it in other people and I'm sort of a little envious, and how much of that is really good for me? I think it starts from the base. But getting to more, just to answer the question, what practical advice I would give is, we have to realize that our day consists of dozens and dozens of very small decisions. We try to make these grand decisions of saying, I'm going to get up, work for 12 hours, and then also work out, and also whatever we think we need to be doing. Those are very grand goals, and we don't piece those out. First thing you need to do is you need to get out of bed. I mean, whatever it is, you need to get out of bed. And you need so many hours to do this stuff, so you need to get out of bed at this very particular time. I mean, that's easy, right? Or simple, rather. Again, not easy, but simple. And so it's just realizing that simple fact. Okay, I need to get up at this time. And even Marcus Aurelius, we read in the Meditations, he struggled with that. But he also rationalized it to himself, saying, you were not made to wrap yourself in blankets and stay warm all day. Now, what a realization. Look how simple again, but how important. It's true. I as a human, as an individual, as a part of this society, as a part of this world, my evolution. I mean, let's go to science. Let's forget philosophy or religion or anything like that. Let's go to science. Humans were not made to sleep all day. They really weren't. So what is my human work? Now, again, the Stoics would say it's living in accordance to rationality, to the rational mind. And so for a rational mind, there is duty. Now, what that duty for you specifically is, that's different for everyone. And that's the great thing. That's where freedom comes from. That's freedom of choice. You get to decide what you want to do with this life. And what you want to do with this life consists of the days and how you want to use those days. And the days split into hours and the hours into minutes. So in this very moment, as you're struggling to get up, it's 5, 6, 7 in the morning, whatever you've decided you should get up. At that very moment, as you're waking, of course, the blanket's calling to you. First of all, we need to realize that that's very natural, right? There's nothing wrong with it. I think we also have a lot of guilt of feeling that feeling of not wanting to get up. But one part of this whole thing is to realize that that's completely normal. That's also human nature. The human nature is split between the body and the mind, the animal and the God, so to speak, the spirit. And so the body sometimes wants one thing when the mind wants another. Epictetus says, the foot complains when it has to step into mud, but the mind, the body, the rest of the body knows that that's necessary right now. So the foot, even though it's not happy about it, sometimes it has to step into mud, and it doesn't need to understand why. It just has to do it. We have to have that relationship with the body too, where we say, this is my proper human work that I've decided. This is what I want to do with my life. Helping animals, helping people, whatever it is. And this work is right now. It's not in 5 years. It's not in 8 years. It's not next week. At some point, whenever I think this work needs to start, whenever that point is, I need to first get out of bed. So if I can't do it today, how can I do it in a year? What's going to change? The battle, if you want to call it a battle, or the challenge, or the opportunity, is now in this very moment, right? As you're struggling to wake up, that's the battle. That's the challenge. That's where you need to show yourself. Once you're out of bed, that battle is accomplished. It's over. You've already done something. Now, the next thing is, I want to be writing in the morning. Let's say it's the only time you get to yourself. Let's say you have kids or the whole world starting to wake up. You only have that time where you have that super calm environment, and you want to use that for writing. Let's say could be anything, of course. Okay, so then the next challenge is to actually sit down and to not be overwhelmed by the idea that now you have to stare at a page for an hour, 2 hours, half an hour, whatever you've decided to be. Again, there, moment by moment. Let me do it for 2 minutes. 2 minutes are accomplished. Let me do it for 5, 10, 15. Before you know it, the thought that you're writing about has already gripped you, and inspiration is coming and thoughts are flowing. And at that point, you can't stop even if you wanted to. So I think it's the realization of all this friction that's against you is normal, natural, and that the challenge and as well as the opportunity is in this very moment. And you only have to act properly, act like the person that you want to be in one moment at a time. Not days, weeks, years on end, but one moment at a time. That's all it requires, because you only live one moment at a time. You don't live 5 years simultaneously, right? So it's these small, very rational, simple realizations that wake us up, quite literally sometimes, right? Where we say, I have a duty, I need to get up. That wakes me up sometimes. When I'm about to doze off again, it's like, if not today, when then? If not now, when then, right? That literally sometimes can have a physical effect. So we need to do the groundwork. We need to stop hacking at branches, and we need to start hacking at the root of the thing, right? And that's what I think philosophy is all about. I think the proper philosophy, it works in 2 stages. Number one is the stage that is more practical, like the things we're discussing right now, where we're dropping the baggage, where we realize all these things that we're doing are not necessary. In fact, they're weighing us down. So if there are 2 stages, the first stage is to drop, to realize that there is bad, because sometimes, even physically, when we see, sometimes we're holding something in our hands and we don't even realize we're holding them. We forget about them, right? So first stage of philosophy is to see, oh, I'm holding this weight, and then just let go. That's the first stage. I always call that, just from personal experience, as if you have a cluttered desk with things on it that you're not actually working on, that you don't want to be working on. So the first stage is to clear that desk. And that's unfortunately where a lot of people stop. Then they have the clear desk. Well, what are you going to do with the desk now? It's not like you have done any work yet. You've just cleared it. Now let's put some actual work on it. You have a desk that you can work on now. What's that work going to be? I think that's often gets sort of left behind. But anyway, yeah, that's what I would say. That's what gets me up in the morning.
I like, you explained it very well, because the way you're explaining these things, it makes it less daunting. When you have all these ideas of what needs to be done, like you say, you have a lifetime ahead of you, or in your mind, you have a lifetime ahead of you, and you're thinking of all these steps. And like you say, all we have is right now. Just take the step right now. A lot of what you say reminds me of, I believe it's an Epictetus quote about right now is the Olympic Games. We don't have time to delay. It's right now. I didn't actually realize you read the Stoics so much. I only assumed it was Seneca just from your videos. So that was quite a surprise. In your video, you talk about, I'm going to ruin this quote, so you have to correct me, about the Industrial Revolution, and then people were catching trains around, and I believe there was a quote of, I arrive faster on foot than you by train. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's a Henry David Thoreau. He talks about it in Walden, in his one book, where he observes all these people, because that was the big thing that was happening in the mid 1800s in the US and also in England and other places, where the railway network was establishing itself, and it's sort of ruining these beautiful vistas that you had, because the train tracks run right across everything. They go a straight line. And Henry David Thoreau, being the sort of naturalist, activist type of person that he was really offended by that. And one point he had was, we're building all these things, and now they're charging high ticket prices for these technological innovations. And you have to work for 10 hours to afford, or however many hours, to afford this ticket when it takes me a few hours to walk there. So instead of me working for that long, I just don't take the train. Now, people always tell me, no, actually the train is cheap. This is an observation in the 1800s. It's an analogy. It's not real. But there are these things in our lives that we think we need to pay for, or we think that we need to expend a lot of time to get money to then pay for something. Just like the reading example, where instead of cutting from something that doesn't even make us a living, that we waste energy and time on every day, we choose to apply ourselves at a job or at something just for the money, not because it satisfies us, but just to make more money, to be able to then, in this example, go take a train and travel, take a vacation. When all this time we didn't have to worry, we could have done it differently. But yeah, it's exactly that. It's like Henry David Thoreau says sometimes. It brings that to mind again. It's sort of like another example that I would have expected from Seneca.
It reminds me of a book. I believe it was the Tao of Po, if you've ever read it. I quite like the book, but it talks about time-saving devices and how these time-saving devices end up using more time. And I've always thought it, we have all these things that are supposed to save us time, but if you go out on a hike, or you go into the countryside and you just leave everything behind, you seem to get so much more done without all these things that are supposed to help you. And I think oftentimes, like we said, the simplest things, just going back to basics, you hack away at the unessential, you reach what is essential.
Exactly. Yeah, it was also that I think there was a quote, I don't remember by who it's from. It says everyone should spend time in nature for 20 minutes every day, unless you're busy, then it should be an hour. Right? It's like that.
I've heard that about meditating as well. If you don't have 5 minutes to meditate, then you need to meditate. I suppose the same logic applies. There's actually a lot in Taoism actually that I relate to your video about. Well, one thing is destination addiction. Is we always feel like like you were saying at the start, is when I graduate, then I can start. When I get the job, then I can start. When I get the pay rise, then I can start. When I get married, when I have kids. And then, you're on your deathbed thinking, oh, I never actually started. I was just going from place to place, moving forward. Do you read much of Taoism, or do you make that correlation?
I've only recently gotten into Buddhism, for example. Well, into some of the works, obviously. One can like get into Buddhism, it'd be a lifetime thing. But I just finished Siddhartha, and it's, of course, there's a lot in there. And what I realize every time I read something like that, it's what I come across what I call universal and timeless ideas. It doesn't matter if you're within Christianity or Islam or Buddhism or Stoicism or Epicureanism or whatever Nietzsche was talking about, all these things. It's all these people, if they apply their mind rationally and with the intent to find meaning in life, right? There are so many aspects in religion and Christianity, for example, that are purely based on power, on control. So when people apply whatever they read in the Bible with that intent, it ends up being oppressive and it ends up being controlling and not at all progressive. But when they apply the same material, the Bible, with an intent of finding meaning in life, of having an actual connection with what Christians call God, what the Stoics call maybe the universe, right? It's all the same thing. It's about the mindset. Now, anyone at any period of time, you read things from the Egyptians, and you read things from someone like Ralph Waldo Emerson, who lived in the 1800s again, or other people I could name from that have just died 10, 20 years ago. Of course, the people now knew of the people back then, but 1,000 years ago, 2,000, 3,000 years ago, a Buddhist monk had no connection to a Greek philosopher in ancient Greece. But now we know that at the same time, in very different places, without having a connection to each other, without even having overlapping lifetimes, they come to believe the same things. For example, anyone who truly applies, again, this mindset of trying to find meaning, first what they do is they want to simplify their life. They want to get rid of all these extraneous things like we talked about. So what they say is, well, I want a simpler life. I don't want this convoluted mess that I'm in right now. And the more they think, the more they realize that one of the ways to get there is to become honest. So it's not at all an ethical, moral reason even. It's in the best sense possible, a very selfish reason to say, I want to stop lying because I don't want to keep track of all these scenarios that I come up with. I don't want to run into the people on the street that I told that I'm not even in town, or all these things. There's so many examples that we say. If I become honest, I won't have to come up with excuses every week why I don't want to go to my friends for dinner, right? It's a person that I don't like that much. Maybe we're growing apart. And every week they invite me, every month they invite me. And every time I have to come up with a different excuse. If I finally became honest, yes, that's difficult. Again, simple, but not easy. If I finally dealt with the root cause, and I found a way to communicate, we've grown apart, we've become different people. I don't want to disrespect you like this anymore. I don't want this unrequited, love essentially that we have, where you're showing interest and I just don't have it. We torture people and we lie to them and we disrespect them by saying, no, it's not that. It's just that I don't have time, or I'm sick, or or I have a lot to do at work. Every time we insult them like that. And like I said, we complicate our lives vastly. And we become liars and we feel bad that we're deceiving people. And we hardly can go anywhere anymore because we don't want to be spotted either having told a lie or being in a place where we said we wouldn't. All these things. So from this very, in the best sense, selfish reason, people all across time, all across locations realize honesty is part of what will bring me simplicity. And simplicity, again, in many other different ways, will bring me happiness. And so it doesn't matter if you're a Buddhist or a Christian or a Muslim or an ancient Greek and one of the many philosophical schools. If you are looking for meaning and happiness, you come to the point of calling honesty a virtue and of calling virtue happiness, right? It's all this background that we're missing nowadays. We just say, oh, there's 7 virtues, honesty, right? Justice, moderation. Why? Why should we adhere to these things, right? And that's the explanation for honesty. I think that's why we should become honest people, to have simpler lives, to respect ourselves and everyone around us much more, and to just be able to focus on the things that really matter, If you look at it that way, it's just a selfish thing to do, but the selfish thing to do becomes the selfless thing to do at the same time. So it's better for everyone. And what's better than something that's better for everyone? I mean, it's amazing, right?
Yeah, I mean, you've actually given me a lot to think about. I was kind of, I'm trying to stick to the topic of postponing yourself, but you've given me a lot to think about.
Well, it's all connected, though. That's another thing. These universal and timeless ideas, as I call them, the virtues, whatever you want to call them, everything that makes us happy, they're so connected. And there aren't that many of them, actually. I don't even want to make it look like it's, again, complicated. It's simple. It's not easy, again, to understand why honesty is important, to understand why justice is important, why moderation is beneficial. It's not simple. I mean, it's not easy, but it is simple. And once you achieve it, everything else becomes so clear. It's amazing. You have these, I've never actually counted them, but there are a few, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 things, these kinds of realizations that really transform your life and is never ever the same again. And it's all for the better. It's what, again, the Stoics would call the highest good, right? These are the highest good.
A quick word from today's sponsor, and then we'll get right back to the talk, which only gets better. And I'm looking to have more talks like this with Atesh because it was an enjoyable experience and I learned a lot, and I'm still thinking about it many days after. But today's talk is powered by Huel, which is something that I implement into my daily life. I get my daily greens in the morning, and now Huel Black Edition, which contains 40 grams of protein per serving and 26 essential vitamins and minerals, all carefully selected by Huel's expert nutritionist. So if you want to hear more about Huel, just wait till the end of the podcast. And also at the end of the podcast, I'm talking about what I learned with Atesh and more, some exciting things. So if you're part of that small percentage that like to stick right to the very end, I've got some exciting stuff for you. Now back to this talk.
How would you work towards these things? Because the Stoics say, if virtue promises happiness, then progress towards virtue is progress towards happiness. How have you done it? Or how have you done it in your life?
Well, so far, again, it's been based on simplicity. It's like Seneca says, get rid of everything. This is simple. I don't read hardly anything with jargon in it. To me, jargon is a red flag that people are hiding behind something, right? If you can't explain it to me without jargon, if I need to have some sort of formal education just to understand what you're talking about, you're probably talking about something that either has no value to me or to a universal and timeless population, or you're talking about something so specific that I better just go do something else for now. I'm not there yet. I need the fundamentals, right? I don't need to talk about this very specific, hyper-specific academic thing. I mean, that's where we're at right now. It's made to seem like it's so complicated. So step one, get away from everything that's jargon or seems like, oh, I have the answer and you don't, and you better listen. And the more you listen, the more you're confused. That's not how it's supposed to be. Why do you postpone yourself? Right? That's all that Seneca needs to really tell us. I mean, I recommend to read that letter and to read all the letters he ever wrote, actually. But just ask yourself, why do I postpone myself? Right? You don't need jargon. You don't need to read 15 books by some academic and of some professor. Ask yourself, and the more you think about it, the more you will make your own realizations. And so anything, and that's why I like ancient Greek Hellenistic philosophy so much, because it's the mind applying itself to itself. It doesn't need anything external. In fact, its very message is that everything you need is inside of you. And even Socrates, before the Hellenistic philosophy, said, learning is actually remembering, right? Like you're a soul that knows all these things already. You've just forgotten them. So learning is remembering. And it really is. This whole honesty example that we just gave, you don't need to read a book on that. You can, and I hope you do, and that makes you realize it. However you come to it is totally fine. But you could come to this thing, this idea, this realization by yourself. In fact, that's what all these people did. That's what Socrates did, Plato, Marcus Aurelius, a lot of them, Epictetus for sure, or Zeno. I mean, all these people. There's no way they got all this from some book, because again, it's going on independently throughout time and location. We're just talking about ancient Greece, but the Buddhists know this. True Christians know this. Muslims know this, right? They all know this because they've applied their own mind to themselves. And again, simple. That's what it's all about. But I'm also curious to know how you did this for yourself. Did you have that same sort of experience where you just said, the simpler the better, and it's just your own mind working itself out, or did you have a different experience?
I feel like everything I was reading was pointing in that direction, and every part of me kind of wanted to ignore that for many years, because in society, being good is succeeding, climbing up the ladder, getting rich, getting successful. So even like you said, I read the Stoics years and years ago when I was 17, 18, when I was a building site labourer, and I read all these things, but I ignored them for many years just because I don't know. It's like there's just a part of you that is drawn to the light of the shiny objects and the lifestyle. But I think I think just reading and reading the same. I read Marcus Aurelius, read the Meditations over and over again, and I started to have a different understanding. When I first got into Stoicism, it was for kind of the wrong reasons, and it's like the myth about Stoicism at the moment that it's about being like manly and cold. I was in a bad place where I felt weak. I didn't feel manly. I didn't feel like I had direction in my life. And I read a Marcus Aurelius quote about being like the rock that the waves crash over. And I was like, I want to be like that. So I started reading the meditation, started reading Seneca's work, Epictetus' work. And then somewhere along the line, I don't know when it was, I made a shift. But I think it comes with a lot of looking inwards, getting away from the distractions. It's like, say, that if you keep it simple, we ask these questions all throughout our life. What do I want to do? What is good? What's my problems? Or where do I want to go in life? And then you finish your work. Most people have work. You get home and you finally have the time to just answer these questions. You're like, right, now I can answer the big questions of my life. But like you said, even though they're simple, it's hard to face them. So there's resistance. So instead of facing these questions, you just pull out your phone and you just distract yourself, because in that moment it's easier. And I think I spent many years of just fighting this resistance. And of course, I haven't like reached some special answer. I haven't reached like an awakening. I'm still on my journey. I'm still growing and learning. But at some point I realized I need to just sit down and sort of face myself, listen to myself, answer these questions. I was talking to Donald Robertson the other day, and it was because he wrote a new book on Socrates. And it's funny, Socrates was speaking to, I can't remember his name, but this guy who he was very proud of himself that he owned all these books and he read all these books and he knew everything. And Socrates asked him, what is good? And he couldn't answer. He started reciting the book saying it's this. And then Socrates kept hammering it in and saying, you've read all these books, yet you don't even know what good is, which I thought was quite funny. But yeah, just I think allowing yourself time to just go back to your nature without all the distractions.
It's to meet yourself, whatever time and place you need. It's your job to create the environment in which you can meet you, right? With everything else is a distraction. But again, how you said, your nature was you had this drive to ignore these things and to go against them. And it's important to realize again that there's also no guilt and no shame in that, because that is also natural. I think it was Seneca, and one of the Stoics anyway, who said, we are born for virtue, but we're not born with virtue. And it's so true, right? We're born for it, but we don't have it. We have to give it to ourselves. And that's the key point. First of all, that it's natural that we don't have it, but that we also need to give it to ourselves. And the important thing is not only can we give it to ourselves, which would already be fantastic, we must give it to ourselves. There's no one else who can do it for us. And that's what, I have this Nietzsche quote that I keep reciting because I found it amazing. He said, in every religion, there are only very few religious people. And it's true, because there are billions of religious people on earth, yet there are also somehow billions of thieves and cheaters and liars. So how is that possible? How is everyone truly living according to the 10 Commandments or whatever their equivalents are? They're not. Walk into any church, any mosque, any synagogue, whatever it may be. Most of those people are not there because they understand what's going on. It's tradition, it's culture, it's habit, right? But the truly religious people, again, like Nietzsche says, that there are in every religion, understand that it's about that time and space, right? That there needs to be, we go to a church, we go to a mosque to sort of commune with God, but really what we're doing is communing with ourselves, and that we need to have this individual and direct relationship with, you can call it God, universe, the all, whatever it is. Some people call it the you. I mean, maybe you are God, right? Whatever it is, it's about finding. It's so cliche. It is about finding yourself. I mean, everything else is, oh, look, you are an accountant, you are an American, you are an elderly person, you're a young person, you're a Gen Z, you're whatever. All these identities, right? That society does push us into. It's not just our fault. It's also, like I said before, we don't need to have this guilt and shame about things. It's not about guilt and shame. We do have a large part in keeping ourselves in these boxes and little compartments and keeping ourselves from meeting ourselves. But society is also, it's true, it is also set up to run that way. I mean, our parents, most of our parents don't know any better, right? They'll do the same thing. They'll just pass it on. And then we go, someone needs to break the chain, is what it is. Someone needs to understand these things. And once you do, it's easy. But so you're going up against quite a lot. That's why it's so amazing, actually, when we think about that anyone comes to these realizations at all. So it must be, what that points to me is that it's in our nature, that like Seneca says, we're born for it. We yearn for it. As soon as we come in contact with it, we latch onto it. It is a lot of luck and chance is involved, especially in our society, in our, at least Western society I can talk about, that it is, like I said, it's set up that way. But if we do come across, Epictetus and his discourses, or a Socrates quote here and there, it has an effect. What is that effect? Why does it draw to us like that, right? So it must be in our nature. It really must be. And once we do have the chance and luck and fortune gives us that connection, where we do come across an edge of an idea like this, then it does become our responsibility to realize and to say, I need to make space for this, both in time and space, right? In time and location, I need to give this space. This needs to happen. If I don't let it happen, it won't happen, right? That's where it becomes our responsibility.
Yeah, I like the way you explain it, because I used to think the answer is only in Stoicism. So you have to read Stoicism and then you get to it. But I recently read The Voice of Knowledge, and I think if I stumbled across that when I was 18 and I was lost, and I read The Voice of Knowledge, that would have had the same impact that the Stoics did. But they're speaking about, or at least they're speaking completely differently. They're not really speaking about different things. They're speaking completely differently, explaining it in much different ways. But fundamentally, when I read The Voice of Knowledge, like, I realized everything we're sort of grown up with is just lies. We're told we're this way or that way by our parents, and then we take on this form. And even then, we were saying, like, you have to get to know yourself, or like the Adelphic Oracle said, know thyself. And when I was younger, to know thyself, I'd think, like, I'm William, I'm this, I've got this job, what do I like? And yeah, you hear all these lies. You're told what you like, and the way you behave and who you are, and how you should fit into society. But as the advice from the book is, when you can just be, and just without judgment, without telling yourself more lies, you'll start to understand who you actually are. And a funny lie that we tell ourselves, an example that the book gives, if you look at a beautiful landscape, you sit there and you'll start telling yourself about this landscape. You say, oh, this landscape is so-and-so, it looks like this. It's like, you already know how it looks. You're experiencing it. You don't need to narrate this thing. And it's kind of this narration we do of our lives. And when I was younger, the narration was that I was weak, had no direction, I couldn't get out of this thing. And I think once I started just being present, so this kind of answers the question you asked me earlier a bit better. Once I started being more present in life, without judgment of what is happening or what is or who I am, and just being, I started to realize more. So I didn't have to ask questions, I didn't have to seek anything, I just had to be. And I found out more than any question would have ever taught me.
You need to get out of the way. And to get out of the way is to let go of all these identities, right? See, this is where I had a moment of my mind applying itself to itself. I don't think I read this somewhere. I might have. I don't really care because it's very beneficial. All of a sudden in my mind it appeared, how can happiness be something that can be taken away from me? Right? How can that be happiness? But then you look around, people think money is happiness, fame is happiness, social status is happiness, popularity is happiness, health is happiness. And you realize all those things without exception can be and will be taken away from you. And so and that's why people who even if they achieve all these things, fame, money, whatever, you name it, they're still not happy, because now happiness turns into anxiety. Because this whole time it was a goal, you were striving towards money, and now you have the money, and now you're afraid of losing it, because you can lose it, actually. It's not up to you, right? It's not all up to you. So then all of a sudden ambition turns into anxiety. There's a short moment of happiness, maybe something that resembles happiness in that in-between phase. But so how can happiness be something that can be taken away from me? Because then happiness is not happiness, it's anxiety. And here again, we go back, as the Stoics say, the only good being moral good and the only bad being moral bad, because these are internal things, and internal things are things that we have full control over. No one can force me to steal. I mean, they can, but I will never have that impetus myself. No one can force me to believe something that I know is wrong. No one can force me to, have an unjust mind, or to have an unkind mind. No one can force me to do these things. If I want to be just, honest, courageous, right? If I want to be loyal, all these virtues that we call virtues, the greatest thing in life, all these things are completely up to me, completely in my control. No one can take them away from me. And like we said earlier, no one can give them to me either, right? So I'm in full control, and I'm fully responsible. And how great is it to be fully responsible, or rather responsible at all, of things that you're fully in control of? We put these expectations on ourselves, and others do too. You need to make money. You need to provide for yourself and for others. And you're in this position of being responsible for something that you're not fully in control of. The Stoics would actually say you're not at all in control of it, because nothing that you're not fully in control of, you're in control of, right? We tend to think, well, of course I have control over making money. I mean, if I have a really good idea and I pursue it and all these things, how is that not control? That's not control, right? That's having some effect on an outcome, but it's not control. Control is you think it and it happens, right? I can decide to make money right now. Whether it's going to happen or not is not up to me. And I can do everything I can to achieve that goal. But again, it can't happen right now, and it can't happen fully, right? But if I'm honest, if I say honesty is what I value, then right this instant I'm honest. And until I tell a lie, which is also completely up to me, I will remain honest. So no one can give it to me, no one can take it from me. I can give it to myself, and only I can take it away from myself. And so that again points to the whole thing, everything is inside of you, and all these other things, the way that society's set up, unfortunately, is counter to that. But it's still very much possible to realize this and to live according to it, and then to give yourself happiness. I mean, what's better than that? To give yourself happiness? That's it.
I'm reminded of a quote by Viktor Frankl in Man's Search for Meaning, that everything can be taken from man except one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's own way in any given set of circumstances. And of course, he's talking about the worst of situation, like the worst situation you can be in. And he's still speaking of these things. One criticism that I get around the Stoics, whenever I say what you've just said, is, okay, so I can't control my health, I can't control my wealth, I can't control my reputation. Do I just do nothing then? How do you reply to someone saying, shall I just give up and take on this nihilistic view?
I would say absolutely not. Like we discussed earlier, it's proper to a rational human being. Ask any Stoic. It's proper for you to have goals, like we said. There's a great quote by Ralph Waldo Emerson who says, "Are you not aware that you do not have the right to go if you are not equally willing to be prevented from going?" Now, what does that mean? It's about acceptance, right? You should have your goals again, but those goals need to be guided by a social, proper, dutiful ideal, not just, oh, I want to become profitable. I mean, that's just a recipe for disaster. But the Stoics also say money is one of those things that are indifferent, right? Indifferent doesn't mean useless. Indifferent means it becomes good or bad depending on how it's used, and also depending on how it's acquired, right? If you acquire it through immoral means, by stealing, by cheating, well, you've defeated the whole purpose of doing good with it in the first place. Epictetus always says it's extremely difficult to become rich in a moral way. But if you manage to do it, there's nothing wrong with it, right? So it's all about intention, and it's all about goals, and it's all about the means of how you achieve these ends. If your intentions are right for money, for wealth, and your means are right, and your ends are right, in other words, why you want it, how are you going to acquire and what you're going to do with it. If these three things are right, and this goes for anything, you can desire anything you want. And in fact, you wouldn't desire it in the first place if you didn't have these intentions and ambitions with it. Again, it's the branches versus the root thing. If we have the root set up correctly, anything that's going to grow out of that is going to be right and proper anyway. And if it involves money, fine. If it involves fame, that's okay. These are indifferents, right? You can make them good, and you can very much so make them bad. And again, the Stoics talk all about duty. If your duty is to help people in a social setting, first of all, your duty is to yourself, to find these internals, to give yourself happiness, to see the things that only you can control, and to maintain them and to live according to them. That's your primary, what I call the work of life. There's work, and then there's the work of life. There's the individual standard and the universal standard. So the work of life is, first of all, that, to give yourself that and to live in accordance with nature, to be rational, to live according to the virtues, to do all the things that are in your control, and to give yourself happiness. That's number one. Number two, secondary goal, the social, the duty, happens to be, okay, I want to help animals, right? Okay, to help animals, you need such and such a facility, you need donors, you need money, you need this. Okay, so here's where money comes. But see, my primary is set up that way. And my secondary is also set up with the goal of actually legitimately helping animals, let's say, one of many examples. Then yeah, of course I need money. And here is where exactly with this mindset, with this setup, it becomes very much so proper for you to desire money, and for you to go after it, and for you to acquire it, and for you to spend it. And so this is exactly the sweet spot. Yeah, if you start out, oh, I want money because I want to be wealthy. Well, then not only would the Stoics say, then don't pursue money, but they wouldn't be the oppressing ones saying that. They would just want to spare you the life of agony that you're going to go through trying to acquire money, and then as soon as you have it, fear losing it, and just be in agony while you get there and after you have it. That's the only point. They're not saying live like a monk, be an ascetic, go into the forest and sleep on the forest floor for the rest of your life and never desire any material possessions or people or anything like that. It's all about where you're coming from and where you're going with it, right?
Yeah, I think one thing we have to really be aware of is our real driving force. Because like you say, you say, I want to make money so I can help animals. But if we're not aware of the thing that actually pushes us forward, our real drive, like what came to me is when I was reading Marcus Aurelius, And I made the conclusion that it's better to be a good man than to be a great man. And because in my head, I always wanted to be a great man. I wanted to do all these great things. And in the pursuit of greatness, you can do many bad things. And I think in an odd way, in the pursuit of making money to help animals, you can do bad things. You can, you can ruin relationships. You can acquire money through immoral ways because you think the ends justify the means. Or maybe you're not even aware of the way you're acquiring these things. So if you can just kind of start with foundation of being good, then if that is what's most important to you, and then you have, like you say, the secondary goals, then I think it's you should end up in a better place.
Absolutely. Yeah, the whole the ends justify the means. That's such a trap. I mean, yeah, that's what it is. It's being not set up in the primary way properly and going after secondary goals without having that set up. That's exactly what it is. We need to practice acceptance because, again, we're in an arena where we're not in full control of, or like I said, many people would say where you're not at all in control of, to get money to help animals, right? You can and you should, and in fact, duty demands that you try things, that you do go after money to then acquire money to then do these things. But if it so happens, since fortune is your boss here, right? You're not in control of it. It's fortune, it's chance, it's luck, it's other people. If it so happens that you're prevented, then you have to say, this is a higher power. Fortune is greater than me. I am an individual, and fortune is the entity in the universe that disperses and recalls everything that has ever been given and taken, right? Your life, your parents' life, your children's life, all, it does not come from you or from them. It comes from fortune. It's been given to you, and it will be taken from you. You don't get to say, I want to be 104 years old before I die. That's fortune. But you can do everything you possibly can to stay healthy to make that possible. But when then fortune comes in at age 58 and says it's time now, then it's time now. I mean, you can't argue with fortune, but that's what we do. And then when we say, okay, well, I couldn't get money like this, but the immoral way is still open to me. I could do this and that. And hey, as long as I get the money, that's all I really need to do. No, your primary goal is to stay honest, to do it properly, right? I mean, even the Bible says, what profiteth a man if he gains the whole world but loses his soul? What if I gave you billions of dollars to animals, but you did something immoral? You've defeated the purpose, right? You want to be an entity that helps animals, pure goodness with pure goodness. You know, they don't want your money, your dirty money, your way of helping it. You defeated the purpose. You've killed humanity because you're a human, and in every instance of your life, you represent humanity, right? In your own scope, in your own way, you are a representative of humanity because you're a part of humanity. And if you've lost your humanity, what's the point?
But for someone who isn't, they haven't read philosophy, they haven't read too much, they just listen to you right now, this is the first thing they've ever heard. What's to convince them that this is the right way? If they go, I'm not being fully immoral, I'm not going around killing people, I'm just doing this little thing, and the ends will justify the means. What is to sort of give them hope or confidence or understanding that this is the right way?
Well, it's, first of all, we are born with these things, right? We are born with a sense of right and wrong. Go into any culture at any time. There are certain things that people just don't do, right? And these are rules that just are innate to us. And when we do, murder, stealing, all these things, when people do them, regardless what time they're from, what culture they're from, they feel bad. And then they start justifying, oh, it's war, it was an evil person, it was this or that. But your own inner self is telling you something. And you can try to rationalize in that immoral way as much as you want. Again, we go back to the selfish reasons. You're going to feel like crap. Okay? Taking money in that way, no matter what you're going to do with it, no matter what your ends are, if your means are faulty, you are going to feel it for the rest of your life. It's a base, and science backs us up on this. People can say, well, what's philosophy? It's an opinion. What's religion? It's an opinion. Perhaps you could say that. I don't think you can argue with science, right? This is psychology. It happens to us. It's in our evolution. We are cooperative animals. That's just how it is. That's how we've evolved. That's our survival. That's how we got here. And you can't erase millions of years of evolution just because you want to make $1 million, right? It will always haunt you. It will always be in the back of your mind. It will always disturb your psychology. And this is something, again, where you can rationally, scientifically convince yourself that the virtues are actually true by looking into psychology. Go read up on the science of it, right? We can't talk about it here. This is books and books. But go read up on it and you will see it will bother you for the rest of your life. So that's just one little selfish reason to do it, right?
Yeah.
But also when you get these ideas of goodness, of a proper life, you realize that if you don't adhere to certain rules, you lose yourself. You don't know who you are anymore. If you say, okay, money can be taken away from me, so I'm not going to identify with money. I'm going to start identifying with honesty because I'm 100%. Again, these are the very few things that you're 100% in control of. So you say, okay, honesty is one of them. So I'll identify as an honest person. Oh, but I could get some money if I'm just dishonest for this little bit. And you do it. Well, now you lost that too. And now you have nothing. And who are you now, right? You don't even know yourself anymore. And that's exactly what the Bible says, if you lose your soul, what profiteth a man? I mean, there's nothing left of you. And you will, again, going back to psychology, you will feel that nothingness and that emptiness and that irrelevance that you have and that empty void. We need to adhere to certain things. And we can choose that to be money, to be fame, to be respect, or we can all these other things that we're not in control of. Or we can choose these things to be things that we are in control of. And yeah, it's up to you. You don't have to adhere them, but that's exactly what makes them so valuable, that you have the choice to ignore them, that you have the choice to disrespect them, to go against them, or that you have the choice to adhere them, to keep them sacred and to live according to them and to give life meaning. If you don't have meaning in life, you don't have happiness, and the way you get meaning in life is to adhere to something, to hold something sacred, to value something above everything else. And if you keep changing what that is and keep sacrificing, so to speak, it to money, to wealth, to popularity, whatever it may be, there's going to be nothing left and you're just going to be an empty self and you're going to know it for the rest of your life.
I like that. I think one thing to keep in mind is something that I became aware of the hard way is I was reading the Stoics and I was like, I'm going to be good. I'm going to be good. But I always, because of me doing that good, Stoics say that that is the reward. You're being good. That's the reward. I can't remember. Marcus Aurelius says, you have done good. They have received it. Why then, like fools, do you look for a third thing? And like a fool, somewhere at the back of my mind, I had an expectation that if I be good, I will be rewarded. Like my life will reflect the good that I'm putting out. And years later, when nothing had changed externally, I had a crisis. I was like, what is the point of all this? Like I've done good, but the world is not rewarding me. But then, it took a long time and a lot of failures to understand that the reward is from the character, and certainly expectations are never going to be met and will always lead at some point to disappointment.
Yeah. The universe, we have this conception of, even if we're not religious people, if we don't believe in God, we have this conception that the universe keeps score of everything. And that is perfect, and humanity is so important to it that it keeps that score and dispenses rewards and awards and prizes. It's just not how it works, right? But that's exactly, the world is fortune, universe is fortune. It, rain rains on everyone equally. If you live in a town where it's raining right now, the rain doesn't care if you're good or bad, it's going to rain, right? It rains on all of us. And even more reason to differentiate ourselves within ourselves individually. To not say, oh, it's raining right now, I must be cursed, I must have done something wrong, or it's sunny, it's not in your control. But if you can say, despite the fact that it's raining, I know I am good. I know I have done nothing to bring this rain upon or to deserve it. That's it. And that's why Marcus Aurelius says, you've done the good, they've received it. Why are you looking for a third thing? The third thing is to not have understood the first and the second thing. That's why. But as soon as you realize that has happened, good has been done. I know that it happened. The Stoics always say, you are the judge, right? The most eternal, divine, and most fair judge are you, because you are always there. Other people may not see the wrong that you've done and you'll get away with it, or they won't see the good that you've done and you won't get awarded for it. But you're always there. You know you've done it. And that's a reason to be fair, to be just, because you can't get away from yourself. And again, it goes back to the psychology. If you know you did a good, then you will get the true prize, which is meaning, which is saying, I have adhered to what I hold valuable, what is in my control, what I think everyone should do. I've done my part. And that's a serenity and a happiness and a meaning in life that you can only get from that. And it doesn't matter who else knows about it. The definition of integrity is doing the right thing despite no one watching, right? So that's what true good is. And you can't go after integrity, which is a virtue, which is something that we should go after because it's in our control fully, again. You can't really go after integrity and then expect to get awarded for it. That means there's a lack of understanding with something. But that's where you go back to these people who understood these things, and you read their works and you discourse with them in your head and you talk to yourself. And this is exactly where we go back to giving it the time and space. These things need to evolve. There's another misunderstanding that, it's all about quotes, and as soon as you hear a nice, impressive quote, something's going to click in you, and you're just not going to be the same person anymore. It doesn't work like that, right? Philosophy as a way of life. That's what it's about. It's the daily practice of something that makes you good at it. It's like that with everything. So why do we expect all of a sudden, when it comes to the greatest things in life, that it will be any different than that, right? It's a daily practice. Someone I read it in some book, I can't find it anymore. Someone said philosophy is the practice of looking at the good from each and every single angle until you have a complete picture, right? So it's that daily work of looking at it from this angle, slightly different. At some point, if it's in the center and you're looking at it at some point you're going to have seen it from every angle. And then you know it and you believe it and you have it. But you can't get there. It's the work of life, right?
Yeah, I'm just going to finish on one question, because something I'm quite interested in is, just because you've read so much Seneca and the Stoics, specifically Seneca, because he's wrote a lot on the topic of death. How important, or actually no, why do you think the Stoics put such an importance on meditating on the idea of death, preparing for death? Like, I can't remember who wrote about it, but one of the Stoics is saying the most important thing you can ever do is prepare for death.
Right. Well, the Stoics say, don't they, to learn to live is to learn to die, or to learn how to live, how to live well is to learn how to die well. And that's because, number one, it's not really death that scares us, or that impedes us in our lives of getting things done, of becoming happy. It's the fear of death. And they keep saying, death is an instantaneous thing. It's one thing. I mean, it can drag out a little bit, but not for long, right? You're going to spend most of your life not dying. And so it's the fear of death that keeps you from everything that you ever wanted. And the fear of death, you can take care of, right? You don't need to somehow defy death. You need to defy the fear of death. And, Seneca says, I think, again, there's nothing easier than not being afraid of death, because when it happens, you're not there anymore. So you never have to think about it. Either you're alive or you're dead, at which point you're not there anymore to think about it. So there's nothing that needs to worry. But again, I had a psychologist on my YouTube channel who practices Stoicism and practices cognitive behavioral therapy, which is based on Stoicism and ancient Greek philosophy and other things. And again, here we go with science, undeniable. The practice of meditating, of thinking about death, of being aware, of reminding yourself of your mortality, has the effect of putting things into perspective. Number one, you immediately realize this petty thing that I have with this person at work or whatever it is, it's taking up my life. This petty thing will end maybe next week, but then there's always another thing. This behavior of having petty little things with people is taking up my life, and all I have is my life. But when you think about death, it immediately puts it into perspective, and it shows you how small these things are. And again, the rational mind working on itself, as soon as you realize that something is petty and small and frankly just stupid, you immediately drop it. It's a reflex. You don't even have to think about it. So how amazing is that the fundamental, basic, simple thought of a fact that we are mortals, that we are going to die one way or another, you simply bringing that to your own mind without needing any external apparatus, any other person, anything at all, you can do that to yourself, immediately has this effect of putting things into perspective. Number one. Number two, another thing it does is it gives you a sense of urgency, but not a bad sense. I mean, this is where you're responsible for sort of keeping a check on it, but it will just motivate you. Urgency in terms of motivation, not urgency in terms of, it's some sort of bad emergency going on. So essentially, it will get you out of bed. And once you're out of bed, it will keep everything in perspective so that small things don't appear big and big things don't appear small. So that's the practice of thinking about death, right? Again, we can take that further and ruin it for ourselves and give ourselves anxiety, or we can do it not enough and not get these benefits. It's again on us to find that sweet spot, but that's the logic, that's the concept behind it. And it's again, just something that the rational mind can do itself without needing anyone or anything else.
I love that. The concept of meditating on death helped me so much. I feel like I could talk to you all day, but unfortunately I can't.
No, absolutely. No, thank you very much. This was excellent. It was great talking to you. Thank you.
Just one thing I wanted to bring up is I recently just noticed today actually is that you have a new documentary. Do you want to explain that?
That's right. Yeah. No, I'm glad you bring it up. It's premiering today actually. It's with Peter Santinello, who is a YouTuber who does great work. He just goes into communities, places, meets with people, and does these stories that are, on YouTube, it's almost amazing. We talk about a limited attention span of people nowadays, but they're an hour and a half long, unedited, unnarrated, no flashy edits, nothing like that. And he just lets people talk. He goes into cultures, he goes into Appalachia, what many people think are the poorest, least educated people that make all these wrong decisions when they go vote and all these things. And he just lets them talk on camera. And you really understand what they're about, where they're coming from. And once you understand where someone's coming from, you understand them and you love them. And you have love and understanding for them. And it's the best thing. So we did a short documentary together where I sort of highlight that work a little bit. And it gives a real life example. Again, I'm all about finding these virtues of these ideals in the real world. And he's someone who also shows us that with his own real work. So I just wanted to highlight that. And that's a documentary that we've done together, which premieres today.
Since having this talk with Atesh, I've been trying to slow my life down and also front load the most important things of the day, which I think is something so obvious, but like you said, you have all this list of the most important things you want to do in your day or in your life, and for some reason, when we wake up, the first thing we do is the thing that's at the bottom of that list. We'll check our phone, we'll procrastinate, we'll do pointless stuff. But if we can start our day by doing the most important things, then we are ensuring that we get these things done, and we're also ensuring that we cancel this bad habit of procrastinating and wasting time and doing the wrong thing. I'm going to talk more about this conversation with Atesh. And also I watched his documentary, which was really cool. I'll talk a bit about that. And then I'll ask some questions to you guys, the ones that stick around, the 0.7% of people that stick around right to the very end. I'll ask you some questions and I'll have a little conversation with you. But I just want to say a quick word for today's sponsor, which is, as always, Huel. Today's talk was powered by Huel. If you, like me and many other people in this world living busy lives, struggle to get in your daily nutrition, then Huel Black Edition will be a game changer. Most products that support daily nutrition are just packed full of low quality ingredients, but not Huel Black Edition. Each serving delivers 40 grams of plant-based nutrition, along with 26 essential vitamins and minerals, carefully selected by Huel's expert nutritionists. Huel Black Edition also supports energy, focus, digestion, recovery, and your immune system without the need for extra supplements or spending unnecessary time and money. I implement Huel into my daily life, but don't just take my word for it. People like Idris Elba, Stephen Bartlett from Diary of a CEO, Russ Cook, the first guy to run across the whole length of Africa, they've all included Huel into their daily routine. So if you're ready to invest in your health, go to the link in the description for exclusive offers, such as signing up to their subscription service, which will give you 10% off all future orders. And if it's your first time ordering, you get a free shaker and a t-shirt. So the link will be in the description if that is something that interests you. And back to this conversation I had with Atesh, something that I learned, the main takeaway. I'd actually like to know your main takeaways. It's always interesting to see what people get from these conversations. But my main takeaway was the point of slowing life down. Like, you really don't need to be rushing through things, because we rush from unimportant thing to unimportant thing to unimportant thing, just with this destination addiction. We just feel the impulse to be doing something. It doesn't mean we're doing the important thing. So I've tried to slow down, front load the important thing of the day, and just make sure I'm either doing nothing or I'm doing something important. And that's how I start my day off. I'm doing nothing or I'm doing something important. That the key of doing nothing. That's the key to the success here. Allowing yourself to be bored. Because what we do, we think we have to be productive. So we say, if we're not doing our important thing, we can do something, anything. Just keep being productive. And then that anything, normally scrolling TikTok or Instagram, becomes our everything. And then we end up not doing the important thing that we planned out to do. So that's something I've been implementing into my talk. I did get a chance on the day of release, actually, to watch his documentary with Peter Santinello, and I really enjoyed it. I was very surprised by how well edited, how well made it was. I knew it would be good, but it was beyond what I was expecting. So hopefully he does more. I'm really inspired by it, and I learned a lot. I'm planning. Well, first of all, I'm getting more of these talks. I have many booked in. I'll be posting another one a few days later. My schedule got a bit messed up with Zoe Winter. She was talking about the shadow, Carl Jung's shadow, which, Carl Jung described as being 90% gold. This part of you that is seen as negative, is seen as your dark side, the part that people hide away. She's talking about accepting this part, understanding this part. And if you can understand your shadow, this part that you hide away from the world, which is the opposite of your persona in a sense. Your persona is you, the good things you like to show to the world. The shadow is the opposite of all these things, the things you learn to hide away from the world. But if you can learn about this, learn to accept it, learn to understand it, like Carl Jung says, it's 90% gold. It's something I've been doing, and yeah, it's right. It's the most growth I've ever had. So that'll be interesting. Stick around for that. But what I want to know is who you want me to talk with, what conversations you want me to have. I'm like an idea of getting specific on topics. And I've been considering live streaming these via Twitch or YouTube or Instagram. I don't really know how to do it. but it's just something I've seen Happy Healthy Gamer do, and I thought it adds a bit of pressure to me, which is always exciting because it's live. I can't, I don't know, it's thrilling. And then also you guys can see it live, you can interact. I just think it'll be a cool way of performing these talks. So let me know what you think. And thank you for sticking around. I'll see you in the next one.